So hopefully you got a chance to look at this Khan Academy little section on color science. I think it's actually really super helpful, and I hope that you're taking a look at the whole thing. It's not super long. Um, Definitely interested in you guys taking a look at the understanding spectra and just kind of you know, it looks pretty intimidating, but this kind of spectral analysis is pretty well described here. And I think that if you kind of start to understand how this spectral graph kind of works a little bit, if you can kind of wrap your head around it, it would be really helpful for you to understand what's going on with computers. I think these practicing with these little nodes that they're doing right here are really helpful. Um, this is RGB, hue, saturation, color. These little setups are pretty awesome, and they're asking you to kind of figure out how to get to certain colors, and you know, it's a good way to practice this stuff in a way that I think is really awesome. So I hope you guys get a lot out of it, and it hopefully makes a little bit sense when we come to something like this, where we're trying to deal with an image that this has what we would call color cast. So the image is most likely the camera's white balance is set improperly for the lighting that's in the room. So the camera thinks it's taking a picture probably outdoors. Um, and and it isn't. It's indoors. There's also a flash, so the flash might have been a big part of this. You can see there's this red light on the eyes. I don't know if you can hear my cat's got some sort of trouble there. Um, so we'll talk about some of the fixing that too, which is kind of cool. So another thing to look at. I was just kind of playing around with colors, and this is a little maybe a little bit hard to pay attention to or do, but I just want to show you, I set up my layers in a way that my CMYK colors here, they're set to difference. You try to do this, see if you can do it. It's kind of fun. But and then I have these RGB colors. And again, maybe just by watching that tutorial or going through that tutorial, this might make a little more sense. But I set these to lighten, and my background is black. And in doing that, it allows me to kind of create these colors. And what it does is that they interact with each other, these layers. And what's cool is that you can see how yellow introduced to red makes green, right? And if I introduce yellow into magenta, I get cyan. And really what's just interesting about this is just how the secondary colors, um, cyan, yellow, and magenta, interact with the primary colors, red, green, and blue. And so, when we mix red and green, we get yellow. When we mix red and blue, we get magenta. When we mix green and blue, we get cyan. And then you can see when I mix cyan with green, I get blue. And if I mix magenta with red, I get blue, right? If I mix cyan with, or yellow with magenta, I get cyan. And just notice, those are nice colors together, right? If I mix yellow with green, I get red. Yellow with blue, I get white. That's a weird one. These are going to mix in funny ways, but just notice that how colors work, and it's really fascinating. Another thing to notice is I changed this color wheel over here. So normally you look at this cube, which is hue, right? And then so these are hue colors. So this is HSB, right? So then across this way you have saturation, right? And then you have lightness and darkness, right? So it's kind of all of those things together. If we change this over to this color wheel, is kind of a cool one because it's triangular. And just notice that the triangle points go to all the primary colors, the red, the green, and the blue. and then the flat parts go all to the secondary. So the flat part is facing that yellow secondary, the flat part is facing the magenta, right? And then you have across this diamond, you have saturation all the way across, and then you have lightness and darkness. It's a cool way, you'll see some applications work with this. Of course, there's the RGB sliders, so, you might recognize these. So here's all red, right? Of course, we know if we bring red or green into red, we get yellow. If we bring blue into red, we get magenta, right? So magenta, right? And if we bring red and yellow together, we get all that. We get the green. And if we bring them all together, right, red, green, and blue, we get white. So if I bring all these colors, so red, let's take the yellow, take the red, the green, and the blue in the center, you get white. That's all the colors coming together, just like a rainbow. So it's kind of cool. Of course, when you bring the secondaries in there, you get the black, right? That's why it's called CMYK, because K is black. And so this is the printing colors. So anyway, it's kind of fun to play with colors this way. And the more you get used to this and more comfortable, color casting becomes a little bit more understandable because there we go. We see this as predominantly blue, right? So when we look at our colors, we can say, well, if it's overly blue, then maybe I need to increase my reds and my greens, right? Because I have too much blue going on. So I need to get a little bit of green, a little more green, and a little more red present so that I get a little more of that yellowish to combat the blue, right? And so that's kind of what you can tell right away by looking at, keep clicking on that one, it's right here. And it just immediately you can sort of know where to go with an image. If it was predominantly some other color like yellow, then maybe we would need to bring the blues in, right? So you're kind of balancing out your colors, and that's color correction. So let's try it with this image. Don't really need these colors, but I already did a test, so that's just a folder of the test. But let's just what I want to do is work with an adjustment here, and we've done some different adjustments in here. We've used hue and saturation. We've played around with the color map, our map gradients, and adjustments. And this one here is probably one of the most powerful ones and probably the most common ones. And it's called curves. And you'll see people use this one a lot. So this is our first kind of use of it. So let's go ahead and use it. Curves is pretty cool. There's a lot of ways to use curves, and if you pay attention to how people work with curves, you'll see there's a lot of ways to use the curves panel. First of all, just notice that there's a sort of a infogram, or it shows a spectral analysis of all the colors. So this is all colors R, G, and B. If you go to red, you can see a spectral analysis of all the reds. And a spectral analysis of greens and blues. And I'm going to come back to these again, and I'm going to talk about them as channels. And you can see here's channels as well. And when we talk about this can always be a little bit overwhelming. Like, what is channels like? And it throws people off. But these are the channels. You're looking at them right here as well. So we'll talk about this later. So try not to stress on this, but just notice that. Look how much blue is over on this part, and then there's not very much blue here, and there's not, this side is going to be all your highlights or your light areas, and this is going to be all your dark areas. So, you can almost see like, wow, there's an awful lot of blue, especially in the white areas, right? Like that dog, right? Highlights are very blue. I mean, it's blue all over, but really intensely there. And of course, this shirt is blue, and so is her. The swim trunk, it's probably also blue. So it looks like she has some blue in her eyes. So there are blues in there, but if you look at the reds, you know, a lot of red right here, a lot of red right here, the darks, right? So the dark areas and the mid-tone areas are kind of dark, and then greens. Just a little spike right there, okay? So how to fix this? There's a couple ways you can do it. Let's try one. We'll just do it manually. So one of the cool things about this is you can actually just click in here, and we can just click and drag a point and just kind of move. See, I can move this around in place. See, if I take the greens out, I get magentas because there's a lot of blue and red left over. So I'm just cutting out the blue, all the greens. And if I increase out here, I'm incorporating all the greens. Let's do something like that. And then let's go to the red. Because remember, we wanted to increase red and green, right? That was our goal. So I'm just going to bring the red up a little bit. See how the tone is getting much warmer and all the blues are starting to drop away. Let's go to the blue and just take the blue, and instead of going up like that and bringing blue in, let's bring the blue down a little. Yeah. I feel like maybe as I go down, the green was getting a little overkill. And that's let's just call that done. That's pretty close. It looks pretty good. If we go to the RGB, when you do RGB, it's all of the colors. So you'll see it's this white area right here. And if I do the white area, on the white line is all colors, and so that's going to be contrast, right? So they talk about that in the that Khan Academy thing. And just notice if I come up, I blow this image out, it gets really super intense, and then if I come down, it gets really dark. So my lightness and darkness is all the channels. So remember, all channels at once, right? So that's basically equal change on all three channels, just like when we have all of them together, you get white, and when you bring in your secondaries, you get black, right? So just we can get the lightness and darkness by using all three channels, right? So when we do all of them, we're doing equally changes there. So maybe I'll just come down just a tinge. Felt like it was a little bit big, maybe a little more blue. Like the red, the greens maybe a little. That looks good. Maybe green a little bit high because you can see some green in there. Yeah, looks pretty good. So that's just playing that around. And remember, I kind of knew that I wanted to do that because it was overly blue. So I wanted to get a little more green, a little bit more red, and I wanted to cut those blues down. And then I grabbed a little bit of the all channels and dragged them down just a little bit to play with that. And that, it's just all by eye, really. I don't know what that actually looked like, but that wood looks pretty good. Could maybe be a little bit brighter, playing around with it. I think I've gotten some better looks and worse looks. So just play it around and see what you get with it. Let's try another version of using the same tool. So I'm just going to hide this layer. I'm going to make another adjustment and curves, okay? This is a different way of using it. It's using these eyedroppers. And this is going to be a little bit hard because we don't have a good gray tone or neutral tone to work with. But just notice how this eyedropper kind of looks like it's an eyedropper for black. This looks like an eyedropper for white. And then this one looks like an eyedropper for gray. And that they actually say sample image to set black point, sample image to set white point, right? Sample image to do gray point. I've actually found these to be really useful for people who are just starting out with color correction. So if you just take, say, we'll start with the black, and we want to pick something that we think is going to be black in this scene. They usually tell you to try to pick something that isn't pitch black or totally black, but kind of what should be black. Let's just try this swimsuit. It looks like it should be black. Not a lot of change. Let's click on white. So what should be white in this shot? The dog looks pretty white, especially right there. So I'm just going to click right there. You can see already, just by picking those two, looks pretty good, right? You can see just by doing that also, just by picking those two, see what happened? The red went up, the green went up, so we got more red, more green, and less blue, right? And so it's cutting some of that blue out. Now I didn't pick a gray point, and picking a gray point in this image was really difficult, but maybe this right here might be a good neutral. So let me zoom out so we can see the change. So we'll go for that necklace. Not good, right? Um, and this was the hard thing with this image was like, what is gray on this image? There was some parts of the dog that were kind of gray, and you can see it's okay. It's pretty overly saturated. You know, you might find that to be a little overkill. So you can click around in here and try and find a better gray. And it's almost like luck. You're just kind of going for it, trying to find the one that really, maybe there. It's a little overly saturated, but that's all right. One of the things that we can do is we can actually change the opacity of this layer to tone and get like a fine tune on the color grade, and that looks pretty awesome, right? That looks pretty good. I think that's even better than this one, right? That one just feels cold still, right? Like this one feels a little bit warmer, maybe too warm still, really, quite honestly. Let's bring that down. Let's bring it down about there. That looks much better. Okay. Oh, they're doubling up. That's why. Of course. Wasn't paying attention to that. I had them both on. Yeah. So let me put that opacity back. You probably notice that. Kind of like that. I think that's better. So as you can see, it really works really well, and you know, so that's just clicking on these three different icons, right? Picking my white point, picking my black point, and picking my neutral point. And you know, sometimes it's a little hard to find a good neutral point. And I just kind of clicked around on that gray area of the hair right there. I just figured something in there is neutral. You can't quite find, you know, it's only going to sample a pixel, so you got to just kind of keep clicking around, trying to find the best neutral that you can find in the space. And again, it's going to be your eyes. What's going to give you the good pick on that? And then don't forget that you can use the opacity on the curve adjustment to really fine tune the amount of the adjustment. And again, I just want to point out, notice that the blues have decreased. We have less blue, we have more red, more green. And in this case, you know, it didn't do anything. When you do it this way, you're usually just doing channels. So you're not going to get a change in your brightness and your darkness, but looks pretty good. So that's color correction, and again, when you're color correcting, you're not trying to add tone, or you're not making a feeling or an emotional response to the image. You're trying to get the image to look like it should look like in real life. Like, what are the actual colors in the shot? What does that swimsuit look like? What does the dog? What does its shirt look like? What color red is the the collar, you know, and the tags and the hair and the shorts and the blue on there and everything, and you know, the color of her hair, all those things, you know, the wood, okay. You're trying to get that to look exactly like it did in the actual real life image, and so that's what it looks like here. This is what it was shot as. It's pretty drastically different. Okay, that's color correction. So this is what I'm looking for you to do, is get a good image on this and get it looking as tight as you possibly can. And this is what I want you to send in. And I want to see your layers, how you've done it. So I don't really need this layer. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out. I'm liking this one, so I'm going to use that one. Here is one last thing, just an extra little tidbit. So how to fix these eyes, right? So extra right here. I'm actually going to duplicate both of these things. I'm going to duplicate both of these layers here. I'm going to say edit, duplicate layers. I'm just going to hide those two. And so now I have a duplicate of these. And what I'm going to do is then do edit, merge layers. It's kind of fancy, so if this is freaking you out, don't worry. You don't have to get rid of the red eyes, but if you want to see it, this is kind of cool. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm going to merge these layers. So I still have these ones behind me, and I can still work with the adjustments of the curves, and then also I still have my original background. But basically, this just gave me a copy of all of that, so I now have just one layer that is fixed or color corrected. And I want to do that because I want to actually go up to this thing right here, which is called the red eye tool. And you may not be seeing it because I think it's probably at the spot healing brush right now. But if you click on the spot healing brush, and we're going to talk more about these healing tools in a little bit, but this is called the red eye tool. I think probably should make some sense to you. So she has red eyes, so we're going to go with red eye tool. And if you try to do this with the other image, I think you're going to find it doesn't work as well as you'd hope. So I found it better if I just merged all the layers, which is some extra steps. She looks pretty yellow in here, you know. I think that maybe that red in the green is a little overkill in this image, but I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to come back and just drag a box over these red eyes. Kablamo. Yeah, I do think she's a little overly, you know, yellow, and we could probably clean some of that up. It's a little yellowish, but that's all right. I'm not going to worry. Like I said, I'm getting too always zoomed in here. I'm always zooming all over the place. And so there we go. Looks pretty good. So that's what I want you to save out. So you're going to save that image, and you know, if you get those red eyes out, that's pretty awesome. Some of you don't even have that technology. Again, that's what you're paying for with Photoshop or those sorts of tools. Pretty amazing, actually. So that's my change, and that's what it actually looked like to begin with. So again, trying to get the image to look as real as what it would look like without the camera problems, right? Still a little bit on the dog too, and I don't think red eye actually works on the dog. I think I tried this, but I'll try it one more time. It did a little bit of something, but it's still funny looking on the eye for the dog. So I'm going to end it there. Yeah, have fun with it. All right.